Heather Jackson, welcome to the podcast. Nice to see you.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I'm excited.
I was just saying to you, I've followed you for such a long time because I've never participated in a triathlon, but I'm a massive fan of the sport. I follow all the athletes. And so I've been a long time admirer of yours. And I was just telling you also that about 100 people recently have sent me messages on Instagram and stuff just saying, you got to get Heather on the podcast. So you're going to be making a lot of people happy. And I'm glad you could come on the show.
Oh my gosh, no, I appreciate and I feel honored to be on here. I was telling you, yeah, we listened to all of them, especially on our van road trip. So, and similarly the other way, I mean, you are literally one of the first trail runners I ever followed since a long, long time ago when you and I connected a long time ago on an altitude.
Yeah, it's been probably like 10 years since that original connection that we had. And anyway, it'll be fun to just go long form with you here and sort of touch on all the different aspects of your career and your future. And I think there's just so many different avenues of this conversation could go. So we'll try and keep the train on the rails, so to speak. But I just recorded a podcast with Tom Evans yesterday, who was the second place finisher in the men's race at Black Canyon over the weekend. And we started by talking about Anthony Costales, the men's champion. And so I figured maybe we do the same thing with you. I wondered if maybe you'd just say a few words about Keely Henninger, the time that you guys shared out on the trail and any interaction that you had after the race that you think is special.
Oh my goodness. I mean, honestly, yeah, I didn't know. I had chatted with a few of the other, I guess, kind of, women who were asked to be on that panel for Black Canyons the day before the race. But Keely was actually someone I didn't get a chance to say hi to or officially introduce myself to. So I would say the first like real in-depth conversation was in those final like 9 miles out on the trail on Saturday. And it was so amazing because she came up to me and excuse my swearing, but she was like, fuck, you are crushing it. And I was like, holy shit, like, thanks, Keely. Yeah, this is an insane day because so many of the women out there, I mean, we had been trading the lead all day long. And so she came by, I went back by her, she came back by. This was all in the final, like 9 to 10 miles. And so, but every interaction was just, I mean, she was so nice, so encouraging. Just so like, she was offering me tips. I kept saying like, I better go by here on some of the uphills because you're going to get me on the downs, which is really where I was struggling out there all day, just with the technical. Like I tripped at least 10 times and went down just fully superwoman, like on the ground. So anytime there was an uphill, I was like, okay, I mean, I need to get some time here. And then sure enough, she came right back by me on one of the downs. And she's like, let's just run together for a bit. And so I feel so bad because she had a pacer with her who I was like, whoa, this girl looks legit. She's like this tiny little professional runner looking. And then after the race, I found out it's Grayson. And I'm like, oh my God, I was running with the two of them. Like, it was so cool for me. I mean, I've raced triathlon for 15 years and had maybe 2 races where I'm actually like battling with people. And this, my second trail run, and I'm just like sharing miles with Keely at the end there. I was with Ida earlier.
Yeah. Do you have an appreciation of just how unusual that is in ultra trail racing? I mean, that was an instant classic competition.
That's insane. That's what Keely said after as well. She was like, you don't understand, because in my mind, I'm like, wow, this is crazy. This is just standard. Mm-hmm. Like every trail race is going to be just down to the wire, down to literally the final few miles.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny. I mean, I'm sure you've heard this from a lot of people since you've been more in the trail running scene, but things are advancing and the professional ranks of the sport are improving, becoming more and more competitive. And now we are seeing a lot more of these dramatic finishes, but it really did come down to the wire between you and Keely. It makes me also interested, I'm sure in your triathlon career, you developed a intimate familiarity with the other women that you were competing against at all these different races. How familiar were you with Keely and Ida and more generally with the professional women's field? Do you know who the characters are that you're competing against?
Oh my goodness. I mean, I literally just over the last like 3 or 4 months, I would say I've been like kind of studying the sport a bit more, or kind of diving into different races or results. So a bit, but not obviously not by any means as well as I know my triathlon competitors. And so, yeah, I didn't really know the Black Canyons field that well, to be honest. I guess the most in depth was my Javelina competitors who I was able to meet and talk with after. And so I knew Casey, fellow Hoka runner, coming into this one. I knew she would be here, but only because I had met her at Javelina. So, yeah, it was definitely one of those, I think, like you're saying, you start to learn your competitors, even just the races are so long out there. Even a few hours in, you start to see what type of runner they are, where they're going to excel, and you're struggling. So, like Ida, similarly to Keely in the final 10 miles earlier in the day, mile 20 to 30, we were going back and forth again with the ups and the downs, or the technical sections or not. So it's so crazy how, yeah, you share those miles with competitors, you learn them quickly, and then quickly, like seeing them at race after race, maybe you start to know that coming into races. So that's kind of exciting for me.
Yeah. And you'll see many of them again at Western States in a few months. So we'll come back around to talking about Black Canyon in a little bit. But one of the things that you and I have in common is that we come from a team sport background. During the broadcast at Black Canyon, Corinne was talking about your experience in ice hockey. And so I figured this would be fun to discuss briefly, sort of what are some of your favorite memories from those days as an ice hockey player, and in what ways has it built the foundation from which you've built this amazing endurance sport career?
Oh, thank you. Yeah. I mean, it's so funny. I mean, I've been in triathlon now for so long, and now trail running, both kind of more individual sports, but I still feel like I've always kind of identified as that hockey player. Even I played soccer as well, pretty competitively all the way through high school, almost into college as well. But yeah, I mean, I think that team aspect, that like camaraderie out there, it's about like connecting with your teammates and having those friendships and having those experiences that you'll always remember over, I guess, individual results, individual efforts. I've always kind of loved those. So even in, you have it less so in triathlon, but even more so in the 2 trail races I've done now, I feel like I have that more in trail running, in terms of like, I shared those miles with Keely, and I'll remember that probably the most of the whole trail race. So for me, it's just fun. It's like, it is a competition. I'm very, very competitive. I always have been, but I also am like, I'm there for the day and the experience, and I know what I'll remember. And I remember my ice hockey days like it was yesterday, and different, experiences with teammates. But yeah, it's those sort of adventures out there that are, yeah, what I try to like, what I look forward to, and what's exciting about some of these events.
Yeah. So in this big professional transition from triathlon to off-road pursuits, it feels like it's a huge sort of personal metamorphosis for you. And I'm sure it also feels like a clean slate, a new beginning, and there's a lot of freedom and joy in that probably. Is there any part of you that's sort of grieving the end of your triathlon career?
Oh, that's a good question. To be perfectly honest, no. And I think just the 2 trail events I've taken part in now, and then some of these gravel races that I was able to do last year, has really helped me with this transition. But in just the true enjoyment of these kind of new and different challenges. And now that like it's actually happening, like 2023 season is here, I couldn't be more excited to even dive deeper into training preparation and going after some of these bigger events I'm targeting. So when it was happening, like last season, I guess midsummer, heading into Kona, knowing I was going to announce that it would be my final Kona, kind of putting that like final statement of like, this is it. That was really tough. It was this weird, it's this weird time frame where you're putting an end to it. And I made that decision, myself and my husband, Wadi, who's been there through it all, of saying, okay, this is how I want to end it. no matter how Kona goes down. And it sucks. I didn't have a great Kona. I got sick about a week out with the travel over. But it is what it is. And I don't want to be that athlete that kept saying, okay, just one more. Like I knew I was not losing the passion for Kona, but Kona's shifting a bit. Actually, this will be the last year for women to be there. Ironman and long course triathlon is shifting in general. And that's fine. The sport's growing, it's changing. That's neither good or bad. But for me personally, as someone who has targeted Kona, someone who has had set goals in that sport, I feel okay saying, I know what I've accomplished there. I'm proud of it. But I also have these other goals and dreams that I've looked at for a while, and just, I still feel I have a shot to go after some of these goals, and I want to do it while maybe that's still possible. So, and now being in it just a few months in, where I'm like, this is great. This was really the best decision for me. I'm so happy right now, and I'm so motivated. And so if you had asked me that last August, September, I probably would have maybe taken it a different route. But right now couldn't be more excited.
Well, you accomplished so much. I was watching some of your YouTube videos, and in the video that you guys made where you sort of were talking about this transition, you were saying something to the effect of that one of the things that motivates you is to just kind of like show the world that you don't necessarily need to remain on a defined path, and that there's no one way to do things. And I feel like you're very much living that philosophy now. Can you maybe comment on that freedom and joy that you're feeling by carving a new path?
Oh, I appreciate that, because that's literally my husband wanting, I discuss it all the time. I just think that you can get in this kind of routine. And I was in a routine for 10 years straight. I mean, you do the same races, the same routine, the same training, the same sort of schedule. And maybe that's not always the best thing. I mean, maybe something else will make you happier or fulfill you more, or even get better performance out of yourself, or better overall, whatever it is you're searching for or trying to reach. And I think it was one of those things. We have this new kind of tagline we're trying to just share with everyone this year of like, what are you waiting for? Because for me, I just felt like I was waiting for that next thing, or waiting to make the transition, or waiting for something to happen, versus just being like, no, excites me. This is what I want to try. I'm going to do it. And actually taking that step. And it's scary. Whether it's a new career, a new, whatever it is, I'm moving to a new place, trying a new sport. I mean, it's scary to step out of routine when you have, say, that comfort or that security, whatever it is. But sometimes it could even lead to better things. And so, in the moment, it can be terrifying, but I'm so glad.
What are you waiting for?
Yeah.
I love it. It makes me want to ask too, because these are sort of like crucible moments in our lives when you make that big change. And sometimes in those moments, an opportunity materializes that you're not expecting, or the universe just sort of opens up once you take the first step in that new direction. Are there any examples of that, of like something serendipitous happening once you made this new commitment to yourself?
Good question. I mean, I guess for me as someone who identified as a triathlete, I have all these sponsors behind me, that it is technically my career. I was pretty nervous about just saying, listen, telling my sponsors and my partners, I wanted to go a new way, and I guess I had tied my identity to that sport. And I feel so beyond grateful. All of my partners were like, this is amazing. Like, we want to continue supporting you. And so it's this like positive energy snowball effect of like, all my partners have stayed with me. They're even more excited as well. And in the moment, you're scared to tell them or make the change. But in the follow-up, everyone is so excited for you. Like, everyone wants the best for you, is there to support you. And for me, it was this like, just eye-opening, like, wow, I can do some of these other things I want to try. And it's yeah, it's not a bad thing. It shouldn't be a scary thing. So that was kind of this like positive, I guess.
Yeah, because I'm sure that was not a foregone conclusion. I'm sure you could have gone to your partners like Hoka and said, hey, I'm transitioning away from triathlon, and your sponsorship was probably tied up in a triathlon budget, more or less. And it would have been easy for them to say, all right, hey, best of luck and whatever's next. But for them to stick by you and recognize the brand value for them in this, transformation of your athletic career, I think is intelligent. And maybe that is one of those serendipitous things where the universe just gives you a new opportunity.
Just a quick story follow up on that. It literally, I was in Kona at Hoka. Always has an athlete gathering, athlete signing, about 2 to 3 days before Kona at the Parade of Nations, and I was literally at the Hoka signing, just standing there talking with Mike McManus, who has supported me in triathlon for 8 years now. And all we were talking about was trail running. He didn't even bring up Kona and the race in 2 days. He was talking about Javelina and how I had to be there to come check it out.
Awesome.
I was so excited for that 2 days before Kona over the actual Ironman I had ahead of me.
Yeah, cool. Well, shout out Mike McManus. Yeah, I've known him for a long time too. And he's obviously a great supporter of all the phenomenal trail running athletes on the Hoka team as well. Tom Evans and I, again, talked yesterday, and he said something that I thought was kind of powerful that I'd love to maybe get your 2 cents on as somebody who's been a professional athlete for a long time. He said that you can't let the wins go to your head or the losses go to your heart. And I wondered if maybe you could share an example of where you had to learn that the hard way, because obviously it's much easier said than done, not letting the wins go to your head or the losses go to your heart. Is there an example of one or the other?
Oh my goodness. Yeah, I love that quote. Such a good one for sure. I guess my mind immediately goes to the losses and not performing well, or like that side of things, where I remember early on in my triathlon career, I had just gotten some new sponsors, just entering in. I think I was a first or second year pro, and I didn't fully understand, I think, how sponsorship worked at the time. And I remember I went to a race, and I ended up it was actually over in Abu Dhabi. I got really, really sick, and I had to end up dropping out of the race, but I literally was on the side of the road crying. My now husband Wadi was there, and I was like, oh, my sponsors are going to leave. Like they're gone. I can't believe I just ruined it in my first try. It was my first races as a pro. And it was just that, like, you don't perform, that, nobody wants anything to do with you. You're going to get dropped. And then that obviously carried on through a lot of my career of, like, you have one bad performance and you think that's all people are seeing. That's all people care about. And that's it. And the whole statement of, yeah, like, your identity is not tied up in wins or losses. It's like, your overall, just how you leave a mark on whatever community you're in and how you deal with those. I mean, a lot of times people respond more to the tough days out there. And then when you come back from some of those tough moments, tough times, tough blocks, coming back from an injury, people want to root for you even more, because I mean, everyone loves an underdog. Everyone loves someone coming back from a hurdle or something they have to overcome. And so I think over year after year, just, re-seeing that in triathlon, like, it's not your results. Those don't define you at all. I mean, people care about you as a human, and they want to see you succeed in the goals you're going after. But along the way, there are going to be, downs, ups and downs. And that's life that we're living. And that's especially sport.
No kidding. So I want to talk about gravel with you, because both trail running and gravel racing are experiencing exponential growth right now. And you've very intentionally stated that you want to have exposure to both of these new, unique worlds. I know you raced Unbound last year, which is effectively like the Western states of gravel racing. If you could just talk about that experience and anything about the gravel racing community that sticks out in your mind with this sort of like fresh exposure that you've had so far.
Yeah, no, the gravel, the gravel and the trail running, both two arenas I've been just wanting to really kind of dive into and be a part of and go to different events. And I was able to go to Unbound last year, 200-mile gravel race in Emporia, Kansas. And what stuck out there is we got there in the few days leading up to the race, and it reminded me of how Ironman and Kona used to be 10 to 15 years ago, just so grassroots. The whole town came out. The town was shut down. Everyone was so excited to be there. You have people of all athletic abilities with their different type of bikes, from the most high-end expensive bikes out there to literally just like mountain bikes from their garage from the 1980s. So, yeah, it's like, it took me back to my early days in triathlon. It got me so excited. And then similarly, like out on course, you have people just, again, all abilities, cheering everyone on, excited to be out there, just out riding on dirt roads. And so it was really, really cool. And that event alone made me be like, oh yeah, I want to be at more of these.
I'd really love to check it out. Does it feel like there's a symbiosis in the trail community and the gravel community? Is it a similar person that's attracted to those different objectives?
I think so. I think a little bit more kind of, I mean, you still have, I guess, the cyclists in the gravel world up at the front who, like, you're more used to riding in a peloton. I think that's kind of separating maybe the front packs of some of these gravel races, because that can be scary. I mean, I was petrified at the start of some of these. But at the end of the day, it is someone who is looking for new adventures, getting off busy roads, people who just want to go out with friends and ride. Similarly on the trail scene, like, okay, we're going to go do this trail race together, share miles out on amazing trails together. So I do see a crossover. I think the running scene, it's not so easy to do a trail race. It's easy. You get a pair of shoes, some gear, and maybe go try a trail race. I think the bike side can be a little bit more in depth. Maybe people scared they don't know where to start with, say, a gravel bike or a mountain bike or equipment wise. But I think it's similar personalities for sure. And I think there's going to be more and more crossover potentially.
I mean, it's so exciting. I mean, just thinking about how you could potentially be competitive in both Unbound and Western States 3 weeks apart. I mean, clearly you're up there with world-class ultra trail runners already, and you'll be competing on the world's biggest stage at Western States in June. But 3 weeks before that, you'll also be at Unbound. And I know that last year you were in the mix before you experienced some mechanicals. Do you feel like you can and want to be competitive at the highest level in both sports? Do you think that's possible?
I knew this question was coming.
Yeah.
I do. I mean, I do believe I could. I think I have a bit of I've been biking and running now, so in my triathlon career. So I have that, I guess, background. I think a race like Unbound, that's the race I'm targeting. That's one of the ones that I am most excited about, and it's longer. I think the longer events really do suit me better than maybe some of the shorter ones. I'm actually participating in the whole Lifetime Grand Prix series this year, but Unbound specifically, it's 200 miles. It's anywhere from a 10, 11, 12-hour days, depending on condition. That sort of, I think, time frame for me excites me. It's not only a race, but it's like an Ironman. You have to get over so many things out there, mechanicals, flats, and push all day long. I mean, similarly to this past weekend at Black Canyons, like leads could shift all day long. It's such a long day out there. And those sort of adventures, those sort of all day, like battle till the end, that excites me. So, the Unbound Western States is my, I guess, Kona of this year, that double, and seeing what I can do at both. And, I'm petrified, but I'm also, I'm going to be more motivated.
Right. So as a triathlete, would you say that, because I watched your Unbound video from last year and you're like, fuck swimming. I think I may be mistaken here, but you're probably known in the professional triathlon ranks as being a strong bike runner, right? So like, would you characterize those as your strongest disciplines in the three disciplines of triathlon?
Oh yeah, 100%.
So
No question.
you're sort of like perfectly suited to compete well at both of them. So maybe let's talk about using the bike in training and specifically for trail running. Obviously, you still spend a lot of time on the bike and you need to in order to be competitive at these gravel races. But I'd love to hear you talk about how you use the bike, the balance of volume and intensity, and how it supports your run performance specifically.
Yeah. I mean, to be honest, I haven't changed much from the triathlon training that I've done now for forever, at least leading into Black Canyons. And that's primarily because I feel like the bike, for me, it adds on so much aerobic work, so much cardio, so much just general overall fitness to the running that I don't need to just go out and run, however many more miles than now that I'm technically just biking and running, and possibly risk injury, versus using the biking that I've already done for so long to, I guess, just enhance the running. So for instance, like my big days, I'll go out on a Saturday and ride 5, 6, 7 hours and then run off. And when you run off the bike, I mean, your legs are so tired from riding the bike for 6 hours that essentially you do an hour run off or 2 hours run off. That's like you're running from hours 6 to 8 at Black Canyons. Yeah. So your legs are maybe not as thrashed as if you ran 6 hours, but they are tired and you're running on tired legs. And when I'm in Black Canyons, going through hour 5, hour 6, in my mind, it's like, okay, you're getting off the bike in Kona. It's like, now you have the marathon. You have 2 hours left to run. So it's more a time frame, mental, I guess, approach to the running side that, of continuing to use the bike in training.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of a revolutionary thing in trail running. This is what we would call a brick session in triathlon, right? So maybe provide, if you want to, just maybe a specific example of a workout you did prior to Black Canyon where you did a run off the bike. Because I know you did at least a couple where you sort of tempoed off the bike as well. And I wondered, I mean, that could be something that revolutionizes trail running training.
Yeah, I mean, a standard runoff usually in triathlon training is just about teaching your legs to come around as quickly as possible at race pace. And so, for instance, like if you could do a hard bike ride, so here in Tucson on Saturdays, there's a massive group ride. It's called the Shootout. It goes anywhere from 80 miles, 90 miles. A lot of people add on at the end. I think I did 100 and almost 30-mile ride. It was like 6.5 hours, and I came back and I went straight onto the treadmill, and the treadmill can help you get your leg cadence up really fast, especially coming off riding where maybe they're heavy, they're tired, but you can't hide on a treadmill. So you hop right on the treadmill and put it right to level. I think it was like 9.5 or 6:30s minute miles, building down to 6-minute pace. Basically, 30-minute runoff, trying to get down to that 6-minute pace and just like hold there. So 30 minutes and then 10-minute cool down, hop off. So just an example brick workout. But you take note for triathlon of when your legs, quote unquote, come around or start to feel okay. And as you do more and more brick workouts, then they start to come around 10 minutes in, 8 minutes in, 5 minutes in. And that's what you're looking for. Again, in a triathlon, you don't need that in trail running, but
and you get a 7+ hour training day in where only 30 minutes maybe is at high impact on the treadmill.
Right.
So, man, I think it's a really interesting way to train. And obviously it's paid off in your early career as a trail runner at Javelina and at Black Canyon. Now you just need to get used to those, 12 to 17 hour type efforts for races that you have coming up. So
Exactly.
I was watching some of your training prior to Black Canyon. You made a video about sort of some tempo efforts that you were doing, chasing some Strava segments around your home in Arizona. It struck me as a fairly novel approach to training rather than having a specific, 4x10 minute tempo type workout. You just identified 3 different segments of various lengths and just chased them, trying to get the Strava CRs. Talk about that approach.
Yeah. I mean, it was this, the segments weren't random that I found on Strava. I had the workout in mind that I wanted to do, but I've been trying to do them more, I guess, what I assume trail runners do, and that's on hilly terrain or dirt roads. And so for me, it's this whole new world here in Tucson, because we have this flat bike path. It's over 100 miles long. And a lot of my triathlon training is just down there on the path, 8x1 milers, 45-minute tempo efforts, all on these flat roads that are very, in tune to Ironman racing. But in trail running, I'm like, we're going to be going uphill or downhill. So I have gone on Strava now to and looked up some local trail runners or trails. And I'm like, okay, here are some trails or roads they run on dirt. And so let's do those instead. And so for me, it's really transitioning from on road racing to okay, I need to be running hills, and I need to also be running. I learned very quickly after Javelina about running downhill and how badly that beats up your quads.
Yep.
So trying to work some of those in as well. And then just finding it wasn't as technical as I needed to have been ready for at Black Canyons, but we have some trails here in Tucson that are single track dirt, but not. After Black Canyons, I was like, I really need to work on my technical skill.
Yeah. I was going to ask you about that. How much time have you devoted to technical skill development? Because obviously competition is second nature to you. Your aerobic fitness is world-class from your career as a triathlete. So kind of the biggest determining factor of your success is probably that technical skill development. How much intention have you put into that?
Yeah, not really any, actually. Yeah. I mean, I've been running trails. So back to the workout I shared on my YouTube, it was a tempo effort up a single track trail here in Tucson, but it was dirt and sand, and it was similar to what we experienced at Javelina, but Black Canyons was nothing compared to Javelina, or opposite of Javelina. So I'm walking away from Black Canyons just being like, okay, there are trails here that I know of. There's some crazy technical over on Mount Lemon. There's one behind our house here at Finger Rock Trail. So there are those areas that I'm super grateful Tucson has that I can practice on. But I definitely need to work on that. I got behind both Keely and Ida out there and was just watching them. I mean, they were pulling away immediately, but just their footing, how they keep their cadence up, landing, everything. It was, amazing to watch.
Do you have a coach currently? Do you have anybody who's sort of helping you with your training, or are you really embodying this experimentation approach and learning on your own?
I'm really just embracing it on my own right now. I've been so grateful to work with so many amazing coaches over the last 15 years. And I have definitely some training, I guess, principles that I have found that work for me in triathlon. And I find myself going back to that here with trail running and my focus on gravel racing. And so I'm kind of, putting it together myself. I reach out here and there to past coaches or friends just for some advice or input or thoughts. But I've always been an athlete that responds better to quality over quantity. So again, back to, I haven't just started piling on super high volume, but keeping up that speed. I've always been an athlete that needs that speed work. And even going into an Ironman, I'm doing mile repeats or kilometer repeats over some of these just longer efforts. So staying with that currently. I obviously have to build volume up for the long runs for sure. But
it reminds me, Heather, I think I listened to a podcast with you as a guest years ago at this point, where you said something to the effect of that you really prefer the super high end VO2 max work to the longer tempo efforts. Is that still the case? And what is the emphasis of the training maybe just before Black Canyon? Was it more upper end stuff, or was it more the threshold tempo stuff?
Yeah, 100% what I enjoy more is the hard, short VO2. I just love it. I don't know why. I just love going out running as hard as I can. And
I hate that stuff.
Oh my goodness. But that being said, I know you also need the tempo work. You need the long work as well. So I built speed. I built short efforts all winter. So I was in Bend all December. I did a lot of short reps, a lot of treadmill work, a lot of uphill, just 15% incline on the treadmill, 1 minute all out up it, over and over to build strength, build the speed. And then when I got down to here in Tucson, about 5 weeks out from Black Canyons, I turned my Sunday runs into longer with tempo, but also still some speed in there. So speed first or hill reps first. The workout, we were just talking about sharing, I mean, either a mile or 2 mile effort and then into a tempo, or hill reps into a tempo. So kind of combining on those longer days. So you get a little bit of everything you're going to have on race day. And then similarly during the week, I was keeping in some of that quality work, but just trying to get the overall volume up a little bit to be ready.
Awesome. Thanks for that insight. So let's go back to talking about Black Canyon now. We released a cool highlight video from the race, and it shows you early on sort of giggling and speculating whether you were on suicide pace, I think was the words that you used. And in your 2 ultra marathons that you've run, you've raced with like a very brave, aggressive style. And you're still very inexperienced in ultramarathon racing, though you've been performing at a very high level. Talk about the race management and the strategy side of things.
Okay, so Javelina, first trail race, I had no idea what to do. I just went out what felt to me like a Sunday long run with a couple friends here in Tucson. I've done some of my Sunday runs with friend Ben Hoffman, fellow triathlete. And so some of those guys up front at Javelina, I was like, oh my God, it's like I'm out running with Hoff right now. Like super fun. It feels fine. And I've raced both trail races, but I've always raced triathlon by feel. So I have my watch on, I have everything on, but I don't look at it during a race. And so I only look at it for timing, for fueling. But like racing just by feel. Javelina came back to bite me later on, for sure. But Black Canyons, I came in thinking I was actually felt okay through 100K at Javelina. So I didn't want to change too much. Mm-hmm. I also was like, don't go out too hard. Everyone was warning about the downhill early on that can beat you up for later. So I was like very aware of that, but I was still like, this feels fine. This feels fine. Yeah. So very much by feel. I raced by feel.
Any learnings from the 2 events, though? I mean, obviously you led through about 85 miles at Javelina, ultimately faded a little bit, but you were super strong through 100K at Black Canyon, under the existing course record. So looking ahead towards Western States and strategically as you're learning, obviously that's going to be a 100-mile type effort, but is there part of you who second guesses the aggressive strategy, or do you feel like you're kind of doing it in the right way? Because I mean, the reason I ask, Heather, is because I've been in the sport for a long time, right? And it's a fairly new phenomenon to where these like super, front running style athletes are sort of coming into the sport. And obviously it can lead to spectacular performance, but also it can lead to spectacular implosion. But as the sport is developing, professionalizing, becoming more and more competitive with such talented athletes, you almost need to take those types of risks in order to land on the podium or have a chance of winning. So I wonder just like how you've been thinking about the strategy element, knowing that you have big goals in the sport. I love how you just sort of stick your nose in it, but obviously it comes with big risks.
I mean, yeah, totally, totally agree with all you're saying. I guess literally from the most basic explanation, I still don't understand how you would pace one of these races when it's so up and down and so technical and so like you don't know what's ahead of you at the different points in the race. Like, if that makes sense. So in Kona, I know what the front runners are running. The front girls are running 250, 251 marathons. You have to hold a 6:42 pace. So in my training, I know that I need to run a 6:42 mile pace or below to be up there with those front women. So for me, it's easy to know what you need to run, but every single trail run is so different that like I have no idea like how, I mean, this is, I don't know what you guys do. I'm like, okay, I need to hold this pace. So I'm going to go out at the start at this pace, but at the start you could be running 7-minute miles and then you're climbing a hill. It's 11-minute miles. So it's, I don't know. For me, and that's why it's by feel. And
well, it's exciting. And I mean, in your 2 ultramarathon performances, you've provided a ton of entertainment for trail fans. And I just think that it'll be interesting to see you continue to learn as a trail athlete. And I mean, bringing the pedigree that you have and the experience that you have, there's no reason to change a strategy that feels like it's working. And I think trusting your intuition is probably the best way to go. And I just, was wondering if you were feeling as if this, I mean, because it's brave too, Heather, like you're coming into a sport with people who have a lot more experience than you and like going hot off the start against like Keely Henninger and Ida Nilsson, who are legends in our sport. Right. And so it does take a certain personality to have that confidence to sort of take the lead early, even if you are sort of trusting your intuition and feel like you're on a sustainable pace. Anyway.
I don't mean those athletes any disrespect at all. I don't mean that at all with the start. For me, it's literally like, just, I guess the competitive nature too. I mean, I grew up playing ice hockey with boys through high school. So boys, girls, I mean, any non-binary and anyone, when the gun goes off and someone's going, like I'm going with them at the start. And so at least both of the trail races that I've been in now, that's just been my reaction. Like, okay, there everyone goes. I need to go now. So that was, just the start it. And then you kind of settle in and it's like, okay, find your own pace, find your own rhythm. How does this feel? Like, where's the lead? I mean, I was still, it's more just, like I said earlier, by feel. I don't know. I'm sure there will be a massive implosion coming at some event for sure.
Yeah. It happens. It definitely happens. So there was an astute observation in the broadcast that I wanted to bring up, and that is just with aid station transitions. So somebody in the chat was just commenting that your experience in triathlon where the transition between swim and bike and run are pretty critical moments in the race. And it's become the case where in trail running, those aid station transitions, those crew checkpoints are oftentimes where critical separation happens. So I'm wondering if maybe you could just talk about the strategy you employ in those transitions.
Yes, for sure. I have so many transition and aid station stories. Oh my goodness. I mean, to your question on the transitions or aid stations in trail running. Javelina, I think we were a little disorganized. And then coming into Black Canyons, it was like, okay, this is very similar to triathlon where this can make or break your race. At Javelina, Casey actually passed me on the final, like in the finish chute, basically the final like 500 yards to go. And I was like, there are so many moments at the different aid stations that I could have, those were those seconds. So I came into Black Canyons, like we need to nail these. And I've always been that way in transition in triathlon where I look at splits after races to see how I compared to competitors, but I always check transitions because in triathlon you can gain, that could be your race. And so we came into Black Canyon similarly, like dialed, like, okay, this is what I'm going to do. This, and out. And so, yeah, I do have that, I guess, experience from triathlon. To tell a quick side stories compared to some of the gravel discussions going on, because the aid stations are a big discussion in gravel. And in Black Canyons, I'm like replaying the race over and over in my head still from last weekend. But Keely and I were together coming down into that final aid station where there's like 3 miles to go. And there was a slight downhill and she pulled away a little bit. She had a little bit of a gap and we're coming into the aid station. And I'm like, is she stopping? And I was dying at that point. I was out of water, out of everything. I was like, okay, I need water, but is she going to skip? Are we skipping in the spirit of Ultra Trail? Are we skipping aid station?
Yes.
Right now? And I'm looking back. She didn't. So I'm like, okay, maybe I can get back up to her right now. And I came in and I handed my bottle in and she looked over and like was gone. I mean, she had already filled and I was like, oh my God, I should just leave. I need to leave right now. But I needed that water. I knew there was a chance if I didn't take it, I might not even make it in. I was so thirsty. So it's one of those things like, is it going to become a thing where, how are aid stations played?
I mean, it's so true. And that's a fantastic anecdote, a fly on the wall experience for all of us who are following throughout the day. Maybe, to just add a little bit more color to the race itself. We talked about how you and Ida and Keely eventually sort of established yourselves as the race leaders and the trifecta who would be competing for the win. It seems like, I mean, at Black Canyon City, you all three exited basically together. And I just want to reemphasize just how impressive it was and how rare it is that happens. And so if there's any other sort of anecdotes that you can add about the swapping of the leads, where sort of some of the other separation was happening, because you also came through the 50-mile aid station basically together before Ida eventually faded a little bit. But any experiences you can share of the three of you guys competing out on the course, I'm sure the audience would love to hear.
Let me think. Early on, I remember Ida got up to me. I want to say it would have been before the first crew aid station, before
Bumblebee.
That's it. Yeah, exactly. So the first bit of the race is pretty wide open, there is some single track, but not too crazy, a lot of fire road. And so then there was it was the most amazing trail I've ever run on before, just back and forth, cut through this like ledge area and a lot of ups and downs into this kind of downhill. And that's where Ida got up to me initially. And I was like, she came by. I'm like, you can go by. I don't want to hold you up, because I could just see her on the downhills, like crushing it. And that was my first example of like, okay, just follow her and try to learn in this moment, like use this moment in the race right now to learn from one of the best, because I was, the downhill and footing and was, I knew immediately was going to be my weakness on the day. Mm-hmm. So that being said, it was like, for me, again, I approached the running and the similar to the gravel of like, okay, don't lose the wheel is what I kept saying in my head, meaning stay with her. Don't let her drop you, like stay in her draft, like you're on a bike basically. So I was just following behind her, trying to stay with her through that first section. And then I can't remember when the first uphill was, but on the uphill is where I noticed, I was like, okay, I'm going to go back by. And there was this crazy back and forth area where you're like, you can see down below you a little bit of like, and I could see she's still there, but it's this crazy, like you're still running with someone in this 62-mile long race which again, like I mentioned earlier with Ironman, never really happens. It's like to be that close all day long. And so, coming into Bumblebee, the first one, I also had to go to the bathroom really bad. And I was like, I had to go to the bathroom, and I wanted to change shoes because I started in some road racing shoes,
Yeah.
which I'm still sorting those out. I'm so used to my Hoka race flats from road racing. Just that, yeah. So for me, it was, okay, I need a little bit better grip out here. I wanted to change shoes. I knew to go to the bathroom, but I wanted to make sure I knew if Ida was still behind or in front of me.
Mm-hmm.
So I grabbed what I needed as quickly as I could. And I was like shouting at my husband and my crew, Robbie and Paul, like, can you let me know if she's through? Can you let me know if she's through? Just so I had an idea. Got out of Bumblebee, that middle stretch into, what's the next one? Black Canyon.
City. That's where I saw you guys exit the aid station together. And it was the first time that Ida had sort of like pulled ahead of you, at least that we had seen as observers of the race. And then Keely was just on your guys' wheel there. So yeah, any other color you can add?
Yeah, that Black Canyons one is aid station is in a crazy one because you run a mile in and then a mile out. So you can see where you are and you can see competitors and different people. And so we were up there, but Meg, I remember seeing Meg, I remember seeing actually 3 or 4 more women coming at us while we were going out. So, and I wasn't thinking enough to take a split or look at my watch or anything. So I just knew there were 7, 8, 9 of us all somewhat within each other's, close. And there was still so much more to go. So it's like, this is a race. That's what I remember thinking.
So you sort of described the moment of separation between you and Keely at the end, but there was also that exciting moment coming into the mile 50 aid station, whose name I can't recall right now, where I think Ida was in the lead and you guys caught up from behind before she ultimately faded back to a 4th place finish. But I'd love to hear any anecdotes from that little episode also, if you remember.
Yeah, coming into the final, I think it's Table Mesa aid station at 50, we all kind of came together about 3 miles out from that. And there was a lead change like every little bit. Like it was, Ida came by me and then Keely came by me and then there was a hill and I went back by Ida. And then I think Keely had the lead coming into Table Mesa and Ida was behind me at that point. We were all very, very close. And I made the decision again to change shoes one last time. And partly to have really bigger trail sole I pulled on my Hoka Speed Goats, but also because we had just done a river crossing and my shoes were just soaking wet and filled with sand. And I was like, okay, you can get in and out of them quick. I have speed laces that I use in triathlon. So it wasn't going to be too crazy, but it was also like, okay, there's 3 of us together right now. More are coming and there's 11 miles to go. So it's like game time. So I was like, those 2 got out ahead of me of transition, but I was like, okay, time to like bring it down if you can. Obviously that late in a race, it's so hard, but
so cool. And just so impressive and so great for the sport to see such high level of competition and matched with a fantastic broadcast. It kept us all super inspired throughout the course.
Oh my goodness. I got so many notes after saying how good the coverage was, like so much better than any triathlon.
Yeah, it was fantastic. So in your post-race evaluation, I'm sure you've had some time to think about it. Again, you're very inexperienced. That was only your 2nd ultramarathon. You have a big future ahead for you. Are there any top line takeaways, learnings from the race that you want to share?
Thanks, Dylan. I mean, the biggest thing for me, just literally walking away, I'm like, okay, the technical skills are my biggest, like, I wanted to go to work the next day just on that to practice, but I'm finally just coming around now. My quads have been so sore. I think continuing to work on the downhill running just to really toughen up the quads is going to be huge, especially for the longer ones like a Western States or the 100 milers. They're still so thrilled.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about and look ahead towards Western States. Obviously, that's only one of the goals that you have for yourself. So maybe just sort of sketch the next couple of months for you. Where are you going to be competing across gravel and trail? And maybe if you could give us any insight into your training, that'd be great.
Yeah. So I'm about to put in a pretty big cycling block. I've been cycling and running, but really was obviously focused on Black Canyons. And now I've got probably 3 or 4 bigger gravel events coming up prior to Unbound being my ultimate goal, which is June 3rd, 3 weeks ahead of Western States. But I'm starting my gravel season at Mid-South, which I know you and I chatted, you would maybe make it out to Stillwater, Oklahoma, but
I'd like to. If I could get my life organized, I would love to make it, but it seems unlikely right now. But Mid-South again, yeah, that sort of starts the Lifetime series, right? That's the season opener.
That one, I guess that one's not technically in the Lifetime series, but I think it has always kind of been one of the more season openers, at least here in North America, 100-mile gravel race. So that is in, I think, 2 weeks now. So hoping to get some good miles in this weekend and then get kind of back on the bike solid next week, heading into that. And then I'm actually, let's see, the Lifetime events actually start at Sea Otter, which is a mountain bike race. So I'm going to need to be getting on my Canyon mountain bike as well. So,
and that's a shorter one too, isn't it? Like 50 miles or?
Yeah, I think it's, right around 50 or 60 miles. So it starts there with a mountain bike race. And then Unbound is the second in the Lifetime Grand Prix series. So I've got Mid-South added in there. I'll actually head over to San Diego for the San Diego BWR race, which primarily because that's where Canyon North America is headquartered out of. I'm super grateful to have their support this year and be racing on Canyon Grizzle, Canyon Lux mountain bike, their new road bike. So super, really grateful for that support this season. From San Diego, I will head up to, I think we'll head back to Bend in that time frame. So that's the current plan. And then possibly, I still need to confirm with you the Gorge 50K if I can get up to Bend.
No pressure. It sounds like you're going to be very busy. We would absolutely love to have you, and you're on the start list. So yeah, just let me know at your convenience.
Yeah, I'm literally sitting down this week and plotting out our travel plan. So we do a lot of travel in our van. And by that, I mean my husband, Waddy.
Yeah.
drives. So, that's kind of the lead in. Again, there's so many cool events out there, gravel and ultra trail. And I'm literally just trying to this always happens in triathlon too, to reel myself in and know, okay, these are the goals and work around those versus kind of overwhelming myself and maybe overcommitting to things. I think could be so easy right now for me because I'm just so excited about all these new opportunities. So, I
was going to say that it's so clear how much fun you're having right now. So I would just encourage you to follow that instinct, and it'll be a fantastic year either way. But it does sound like your spring is going to be especially busy.
I know.
2 major highlights in Unbound and Western States where we will all be eagerly watching you perform on the race course. Heather, it's been so fun to have you on the podcast. I'm going to close with 2 philosophical questions that I've been asking people recently. The first one is, who is a person that you admire? It can be a person inside of sport or outside. And why is it that you admire that person?
Ooh. I would say a person I admire is my husband, Waddy. He literally, he and I are opposites. And I think that's why it works. But I also think that's why he teaches me so much. He is like the most caring, giving, selfless, just kind, always thinking about others. And for me, it's always just, not that I'm not that, but I've learned so much from him about just, yeah, being that sort of sensitive, caring type, like always just, yeah, I can't say enough good things about him, but I admire him so much and how hard he works. He's the hardest working person I know. I mean, yeah, it's nonstop. You think you're tired or tired for training or work, and he's just still go, go, go. And so, yeah, every day I'm just like, wow, you amaze me every single day. So
shout out Waddy. That's great. Final question for you, Heather. You've been an athlete your whole life: soccer, hockey, triathlon, ultra running, gravel racing. What is one profound truth you've learned about yourself or life in general through your experience as an athlete?
I think for me, one truth that I've learned through sport, I feel like it's so cliche. Everyone says it's about the journey, not the results or the end, but it is. I mean, this is life we're living every single day. Like, we're not going to get back today. And so every day for me, it's like about making the most of it, about enjoying it. We can be out there going after goals and working our hardest and trying to improve, but it's really in the moment that you're living every single day. And so for me, it's about, yeah, just always trying to be in the moment, living day to day and not planning too far ahead. You have to, obviously, you have to with athletic goals, with work, with family, with friends. I mean, everything, but being very aware of where you are in the moment is so important, and enjoying that and being grateful for what you have this very second.
What a beautiful place to end. Heather, it's so great to have you in our sport. Thank you for taking the time to come onto the podcast. Thanks for having the gracious sportsmanship type mentality coming into our sport and really sort of, making a lot of new fans quickly. Good luck with everything you have coming up in the spring, and we'll look forward to seeing you in Western States.
Oh my gosh. Thank you so much. It was an honor to be on here.